Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Holly Jonas. I'm with the ICCA Consortium Secretariat. If you are not familiar with the ICCA Consortium, we are a membership-based association dedicated to supporting Indigenous peoples and local communities who are protecting, conserving, defending, sustaining their collective lands and waters and territories of life. So we are here today to talk about territories of life in coastal and marine systems specifically. So I think, as we all know, Indigenous peoples and local communities are often caught between a rock and a hard place. So in the fisheries context, there's often industrial fisheries and other forms of overexploitation of our coasts and oceans, perhaps infrastructure, ports, and so on. And on the other hand, communities are often excluded from top-down forms of nature conservation, such as marine protected areas. However, Indigenous peoples and local communities are among the best conservationists and the most sustainable fishers on our planet. They are contributing hugely to conservation, but also to sustainable livelihoods through their different forms of fisheries and use of coastal systems and resources, as well as in a broader ocean context. There are also very important connections between terrestrial land systems and coastal and marine systems. A lot of communities do have ways of life and livelihoods that do span the terrestrial and coastal marine contexts. So we want to also situate this event today in the broader global context. We are obviously facing a number of significant challenges environmentally, socially, and so on. There's ocean acidification, coral bleaching, many fisheries around the world are collapsing or have been collapsing in recent years, and the future trends are not looking particularly positive. Mainstream conservation responses have tended towards large marine protected areas or exclusionary forms of conservation that have seen people as the enemy of healthy oceans. However, there's also a very strong resurgence amongst Indigenous peoples and local communities and their supporting organizations that are proving really in a very compelling way that local is best. And when you have powerful customary governance systems, local governance systems that are very in tune with the local environmental context and so on, where you have communities, cultures, identities, ways of life inherently tied to their coastal and marine systems, that is where you get effective, sustainable, equitable forms of conservation and sustainable development. So we're going to hear today from a number of communities, community representatives, and support organizations who will share some of their experiences, their perspectives, and their realities of what they're facing at the grassroots and national levels. This event is happening as we speak. The UN Convention on Biological Diversity negotiations towards the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework are happening right now in Nairobi. And it is also a few days before the UN Ocean Conference will take place in Lisbon, Portugal. More broadly, this is also the International Year of Artisanal Fisheries and Aquaculture. So this event is a platform, a space for grassroots and community representatives to share their experiences and perspectives in a space that is often dominated by larger conservation NGOs, by fisheries industry, and so on. So it's really important to provide this space and to hear directly from community organizations and Indigenous peoples themselves. So today we expect this to take around 2 hours in total. We're going to have the first part of the program will be 4 different presentations, short and sweet. One from our colleague Lorena, who will introduce what Indigenous peoples and local communities, coastal and marine territories of life, introduce what that is, if you're not yet familiar. Then we will hear from Tero from Finland about fishing communities, winter centers, and traditional knowledge systems in Finland and in many other parts of the world. We will also hear from Joanna from an Indigenous community in Chile, sharing about her community's experiences with these issues, as well as territorial governance and engagement with local administrations. And finally, in the first part of this session, we will hear from Sutel Shugu from Pongso and Tao in Taiwan, and he will share about their experience with their territories of life in that context. We will then have a short break with some musical stylings from Kevin Chang and his group in Hawaii, recorded. Don't worry, Kevin, it won't be live. And then in the second part of the session, we will hear from Vivienne from Copi Solidar in Costa Rica about human rights-based ocean conservation. So if you have been involved in the international processes, you've surely heard about the strong push for human rights and conservation to be recognized, including in the post-2020 framework. So Vivienne will share about that. We will then hear from a number of fishing community representatives and their organizations who will introduce a brand new declaration on small-scale fisheries, which was recently launched ahead of the UN Ocean Conference. So stick around for both parts of this session. It is being recorded, and we will share a summary as well as clips from the recording afterwards on our website and YouTube channel, if for some reason you're not able to catch all of it. After each speaker, particularly in the first half, we will have a few minutes for questions and answer. So if you do have the questions, please add them in the chat box, and we'll do our best to respond to them either live, or if we don't have time, the speakers can respond in the chat box as well.